Hi, I'm Richard from 4K.com. Today, we sat down with John Allen of Decrypt Capital and, more importantly, a massive Casascius coin collector. He brought in some incredible pieces from his collection before it hits the 4K marketplace.
I think a lot of people in blockchain have kind of interesting paths that led them there, right? So I was actually in the military for 5 years. I disarmed bombs. I always tell people that got boring, so then got into blockchain, a little more interesting. But yeah, actually on my last deployment to Afghanistan, I got blown up. Was in the hospital for quite a while, had a lot of time on my hands, and found the Bitcoin white paper. I've always been super interested in macroeconomics, politics, encapsulated in this, very amazing, beautiful paper was all of that. So went down the rabbit hole, went on to co-found blockchain at Berkeley, also San Francisco Blockchain Week, and I'm also a co-founder at Decrypt Capital.
When did you really get into crypto? When did you find, you found out Bitcoin white paper, but when did you really take your first step? When did you buy your first, or how did you get your first Bitcoin?
Started kind of reading about it in 2014, got really involved in the community. I mean, that time it was just Bitcoin talk, Reddit Bitcoin. There wasn't really that much, you could wake up and in 2 hours you could catch up on everything that had happened that entire day. It's much simpler times, right? But started to get very actively involved in more so the trading. I started investing kind of all of my money that I had into Bitcoin. At that time, China had most of the volume, so I was almost nocturnal. I would stay up trading because that's when a lot of the price action.
Roughly what year was this, roughly?
So this was 2014, and then kind of 15, I was more doing the active trading. I think being in the military, it was, especially doing explosive ordnance disposal, it was just a very small, kind of tight-knit, passionate group. I was really looking for something that was like equally as passionate, as kind of intense, and I just stumbled upon this crypto community of people who were just like rabidly not happy with status quo, who wanted to change the world, who wanted to disrupt everything. They started talking about just different governance, like voting, like money in general, like value, like people's participation in finance, and just like all these kind of deep-seated beliefs that people have from just growing up and being enculturated into the society we live in. I think that if you look at blockchain and you have any kind of individual facet of interest, it almost connects to any of that. So being in this very interdisciplinary, very passionate community of people who wanted to just change things and like make a better future, it was contagious. And I think it's kind of hard not to really fall down that rabbit hole and just start to think about it every waking moment and how you can kind of engage, participate, and contribute to this space.
Hey, I remember stumbling onto the Cypherpunks mailing list. I don't even know how. Just joined a whole bunch of mailing lists, got this one, and they released the Bitcoin. I still remember, do I spell it bit space coin? Do I spell bit space capital coin? Do I spell bit capital coin? I couldn't figure it out. But I remember after 2008, because I was around when Bitcoin Talk, when Satoshi was actively posting on Bitcoin Talk. I remember reading it on a philosophical level. I really enjoyed it on a philosophical level. I was like, this is the reaction to 08.
A lot of my friends were basically saying that I was investing in this magic internet money. There was this huge kind of doldrum cycle, 2014 to 15, not a lot happening. And so for me, I started looking for some hedges potentially. I thought that there was definitely something there. I was very excited about Bitcoin. I thought there was going to be digital currency was kind of inevitable, but I didn't know if it was going to be a Fed coin, or like some other coin, right? And so I thought, hey, there's something special about Bitcoin, and I think collectibles are quite interesting. And a lot of the value from collectibles comes from people who are insanely passionate about something. And I never met people more passionate than the Bitcoin community. I had like 2 or 3, and then I was like, well, if I have all these brass ones, I want the full brass set, I have the silver ones, I want the full brass, like I'm so close to the full set, I might as well get the full, so for me it was, okay, I think Bitcoin is going to be the next thing, but maybe if something kind of, one-ups it, or kind of comes after it, I still think that these will have collectible value, because they were, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, it was this first kind of push into this new digital domain. And even if Bitcoin goes to 0, I still think these coins will have value. So for me, it was a bit of a hedge and also a bit of a kind of obsession, collecting and coins was fun.
Why are Casascius coins so important to the crypto community and to the, how would you explain it to the outsiders?
Yeah, well, I think the importance is kind of interesting because I've just heard multiple stories of people who were interested in Bitcoin early, and it's such kind of an abstract concept that it's kind of hard to describe. But if you hand somebody something tangible, you hand them a coin, and you say, hey, this actually contains value on it. It's kind of interesting that it acts almost like a bridge, and it just kind of clicks with people sometimes. When they like hold it in their hand, they're like, oh, this is like money. So I mean, obviously, Bitcoin blockchain's kind of evolved. It's not simply just money. It stands for a lot of different things. But I think for some people to kind of get that base understanding to start engaging with it, that's very helpful. So I mean, that's one of the original reasons why the creator Mike Caldwell made it. It's kind of act as that bridge between the digital and the physical. You have this physical cash in the everyday world, but now you have this digital cash, and kind of marrying those two in a single token that you can hand to somebody and explain. It's a great conversation starter. So, Casascius and Mike are seen as like kind of the godfather of the physical crypto space. He's super involved in Bitcoin early days, and so I think that's why it's kind of relevant. And I mean, that concept that he came up with about being this bridge and helping describe things, you see it almost every day, and that all the news articles, anytime they do a Bitcoin article, they need a header images. They did something to describe it, right? And you see so many Casascius coins. A lot of them use some of these like other ones that don't actually have Bitcoin on it now, but you still see these Casascius coins pop up pretty consistently. So it's nice really seeing that like his vision is continually validated by the media. So 2011 were like the first minted coins. They started as just simple brass coins. You kind of like mentioned before, like it was just like very kind of cheap coins that they were just handing out, and that was the whole purpose. Have a couple of dollar coins. They were just super cheap minted brass ones that you could just carry in your pocket and you could hand out, and you could peel the hologram. It didn't really matter, it was just kind of a conversation starter. People just really kind of started to connect with them. So then there was some demand for a little bit more collectible ones that wouldn't put in your pocket and scratch up and scuff up and get all oily. So that's when the silver ones started. But then in 2013, FinCEN actually sent Mike Caldwell a letter that said, hey, you are a money transmitter, you need to sign up for the proper licenses to do this. And at that point, he had minted quite a few coins that had around 90,000 Bitcoin contained on them, which is a significant amount of capital even at those prices. And then, he did a phenomenal job on making sure that he had none of the private keys, had no access to them. But if one person thinks, hey, maybe he does have the private keys, maybe I want those 90,000 Bitcoin, it's a bit of risk to him. Combine this with some of the oversight with kind of FinCEN wanting to kind of have a little bit more regulatory oversight over him and his production for these, he decided to no longer produce these coins. But that's just kind of the brief history, 2011 to 2014 for these.
Right, and so how many coins are there left? Is there a place I can go to check how many of them are physically loaded still?
There's almost 28,000 coins minted total. There's still around 20,000 of those that are unpeeled. And what's kind of cool is you can see on the Casascius site, there's a text file that has all of the public keys. And you can see in real time, it queries all of these public keys and sees, have these coins been redeemed, which then somebody has peeled it, seen the private key behind that hologram, and then swept those Bitcoin to another wallet to be able to sell or do whatever they would like with it. So it was around 90,000 Bitcoin originally loaded. So while only 8,000 of the 28,000 coins were peeled, you actually have only around 42,000 Bitcoin still remaining on these coins. So there's obviously more incentive to peel a 100 Bitcoin coin, or bar rather, than there is to peel kind of a half Bitcoin or a 1 Bitcoin.
Right. So. Right in front of us, we have a collection of coins. We can say that the ones in the plastic cases with the yellow label are Jons. And let's say this one is the one I have, the one and only one that I have, and that's saddens me a little bit. So what is the difference between these two? What are graded ones? Mine is considered ungraded. What is the difference? How do people understand the difference?
And when you get into coin collecting, it's the numismatic value, which is basically the value of the coin. And if you look at a coin, it's maybe hard to differentiate between, if you look at your 2012 1 Bitcoin brass coin and you look at my 2012 1 Bitcoin brass coin, it's kind of hard to see the difference maybe to, the untrained eye or even to the naked eye. But if you start to send it to someone like Annex, who their entire job is to basically take these, have kind of all of these photos and be able to compare and contrast. They have the kind of like microscopes that they go through these things, and they know kind of what the standard for these are. And so once you have them encapsulated, it's not me saying, hey, this looks like a good coin or it looks like unscratched. It's actually having somebody who, their entire business model is to like grade these and put them into relation for other coins.
So the question I guess a lot of people will have is a graded coin worth more than the redeemable coin? And how much more, or is there an arbitrary value? How do you price the graded coins?
It's kind of exponentially harder to get the higher grades. So you look on these coins and they're all going to be mint state. It's going to say MS in front of the grade, and that's because they're uncirculated. So that's how they grade uncirculated coins, is they're supposed to be mint state. And those range from anywhere from 60 being the lowest to 70, which is perfect. Perfect, obviously, is very challenging to get. You can look at the Annex Populations Report, and you have MS 65, 66, 67. We'll have like hundreds or maybe even like thousands of these. You get to like MS 68, you're only going to have maybe a few hundred. You get to MS 69, you're only going to maybe have a few dozen. You get to MS 70, you're going to have like on the order of 10 to 20 of these. Because of scarcity, you're going to have the MS 70s, 69, the very kind of high graded coins are going to be worth quite a lot more. Because then it's kind of up to the buyer and the seller to kind of agree based on the values of these other graded coins where they think that lies. And so it's a bit more challenging than something that's just, hey, I have a number, I have a population report, I know how many of these exist.
Yeah, so for viewers, this is very similar to how trading cards are graded. Like there's PSA and Beckett, right? It's like a Beckett 10 is extremely valuable. You have a first edition shadowless Charizard Beckett 10, that's worth, that's auction grade, and you have like a Beckett 6, and there's like, magnitude, the difference in pricing, right? So I think it's very similar to this. These are loaded still, right? What about, is there like graded ones that have been redeemed?
Yeah, so you can get them redeemed, but so there's basically this tamper evident hologram on the back. So I mean, if you peel it to reveal the private key below it, it just completely destroys that tamper evident holographic seal. And so if you send one in with that hologram, like with it clearly removed, they'll actually grade it MS60 and they'll say damaged.
Is there a market for the graded redeemed coins?
When I first started collecting these, you'd pay $200, $400, $600 in Bitcoin. Someone would just mail it to you. Obviously the value for some of these things, you can't just put it in the mail. You have to like fly. You have to meet somebody. There's a lot of kind of trust assumptions, which is why I think 4K is so interesting, because I think one of the main problems with this market is kind of liquidity. And a lot of these things, like there's one of the major escrows on Bitcoin Talk is like anonymous miner, and he's super trusted, been around forever, right? But it's completely anonymous. You don't really know. You send him tons of Bitcoin, you end up flying some guy out, you then meet him, you get this coin. It's just like a lot of kind of hurdles to overcome. Whereas if you have something that is unloaded, it's much lower value. Usually they're selling for anywhere from like maybe 1, 5, 10K, kind of depending on the kind of how rare the coin is and how kind of intact the hologram is. I mean, when you peel these, you can really destroy them, or you can just like barely reveal them so they're still mostly intact. So there is a market, obviously ranges on quality condition, the hologram specifically. But people like to buy them because it's easier to transport and it's also much cheaper. Not many people now can kind of buy these coins.
Has there been any scams? Have there been any fakes out there? How do you know they're real? How's the community been really handling these type of issues?
Yeah, and so that's obviously for all collectibles. This is like a huge issue, right? I think that's one of the great things about blockchain is you don't really have to worry about that, But when you get into the physical domain, with enough time and resources, there's obviously some concerns. There's some good fakes from pretty much any collectibles. I would say Casascius is no different. But one, if you have them slabbed, especially some of these yellow slabs, this was pre-2017. So the price of Bitcoin, the incentive to actually create fakes plus create fake slabs was much less. There's actually a thread on Bitcoin Talk that is like dozens of pages long for anyone that's seen these kind of clones, or seen ones that are like similar holograms, and the community very much keeps track of all these. A lot of people actually take it on themselves to buy the fake ones from eBay, and they'll kind of document it. They'll see the kind of subtle differences, and they'll really go into that to kind of watch out for the community. So it's something that if you're like very much involved with it, you can definitely tell the fakes. I would say that there haven't been any convincing fakes. They get the kind of front almost correct, but if you notice, like, it says like Verus numerous and a few things, and you can see the actual mint for the ones that are existing. A few of the letters are a little bit like, don't have as high of a relief, or they have like subtle line differences, they didn't get exactly right. And then one of the largest things is the hologram. The hologram is very challenging to get, even if you get the design correctly. Kind of getting that depth correct and also the color shimmer when you tilt it is very challenging to match. So I think it's one of those things like if you have a lot of hands-on with these, you can kind of see it.
Are you going to hang on to these? Do you want to pass them down to your kids? Like, what is the future for you in Casascius coins?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think for me in general, I've just been involved in the community for so long. I really just would like it to be more well-known. I think it's like really interesting that, there's a lot of people who are super involved in Bitcoin, and a lot of people haven't even heard of this. I think it's just a really kind of elegant and beautiful piece of history for the kind of the crypto space at large, especially if you're very interested in Bitcoin or have a healthy respect for it. my interest is just to get these out there more, get people more familiar with them, their history, hopefully get more people interested in it, have a little bit of a more liquid market. Like I mentioned, there's still around 42,000 Bitcoin on here, around $2 billion worth of value locked on these. So, I always tell people that this is the original NFT, and I think with this kind of NFT hype, it's great. I love a lot of these projects. I also think that it would be great to see these kind of highlighted in the same way, as far as physical collectibles than NFT'd and traded. So I would say, not sure if I want to sell them. I think having some of the optionality to maybe, plug this into DeFi, get crypto loans, maybe fractionalize them to some extent, depending on, where you're located and the legality of that. But there's just a lot of different interesting opportunity for these.
To me, I totally see this thing in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now being in like the Smithsonian. This is such a core part of crypto culture. Like, this is one thing that I think that most people don't understand. And I think, like, to me, this is the ultimate flex for the Bitcoin maximalists. Like, if you're a Bitcoin maxi and you don't have a Casascius coin, not just one, a collection of them, are you really a Bitcoin maxi? Come on. Come on, you gotta flex, you gotta have these. And so, have you seen these in museums? Have you seen them displayed in art? Or like, have you seen them engaged in anywhere outside of this, like the forum or in private individuals? And you think that will happen a lot more in the future? I
do think it will, because I mean, like you said, I think that it's just a great kind of visual depiction of, there's a lot of museums that have these currency sections, right? And you can see this different kind of history of currencies, going from cowrie shells all the way to kind of paper.
I love those museums. I visit every single one of them.
And it's like, I could just see these represented as this kind of like physical to digital, right? And whatever's next is going to kind of continue on those displays. But I know that a few museums have, maybe 1 or 2 coins kind of featured and displayed. Definitely not the Smithsonian, which I think
this will be in the Smithsonian.
Will be there.
These will be in the Smithsonian. I'm 100% confident. We don't know when, but it will be.
Soon, hopefully, right? Because I think it's just a very elegant kind of display of kind of like, where we've been to where we're going. I think kind of on each side, you can kind of see the difference of that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see these displayed in more museums going forward, especially with the current trajectory of the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin market.